Are you a dungeon master looking to create your own world for Dungeons & Dragons, but you aren't sure where to start, or you're having trouble pinning down the details? Look no further, this is the video for you. Hello and welcome, my name is Croft and I am the Dungeon Master for UniversiD&D. One of the questions I am most frequently asked is about creating an original world for Dungeons & Dragons. I find many Dungeon Masters want to feel personally attached to the worlds they're running and make it for themselves. Even new DMs a lot of time want the thrill and excitement that comes from building a world from scratch, and they want to be able to tell people about the happenings that occur in a world they've designed. Well, my friend, if that's you, then you're in the right place. I'm going to walk you through my approach to world building and how you can go from an idea to a fully fleshed out living world for you and your players to enjoy. Now, this is a big topic to discuss in one video, so there will likely be 4 videos covering this. Starting your world and making the map, the people and politics of your world, the lore and history, and any other loose ends. In this first video, I want to give you some big ideas to think about when making your world, but also some concrete ways that you can begin to make those first pushes. We're going to be using my world, Aurelia, as a reference, so you can see how I go about world building. The very first thing you want to ask yourself when approaching a new world is, what do I want to say with my world? What's the thing that sets your world apart from the many published settings that already exist? This is what I call the defining element of a world. If your world is interchangeable with the Forgotten Realms, then there's really no point in making it in the first place. So figure out what that defining element of your world is and use it as a springboard for the rest of your world building. Now, this doesn't have to be some big existential idea. It could be as simple as, I like dinosaurs, my players like dinosaurs, and we want to play in a world that's more suitable for dinosaurs. That's a perfect, viable defining element. Consider a theme or a genre that you and your players would enjoy playing most and go from there. Maybe you would want to play in a high fantasy setting like Middle-earth, or maybe you're looking for more of a sci-fi genre for your table. I said earlier we would be using my world, Aurelia, as an example. When I was first drafting Aurelia, the defining element that I wanted to bring to the table was the concept of a world defined by its nature. A world where the cities do not define the landscape defines the cities. Entire civilizations are built around and inside of forests and rivers and mountains. Hell, the first session in Aurelia takes place inside of a tavern carved into a massive tree. So that's the element I brought to my world, the significance of nature. Maybe your world explores how civilizations evolve without interconnection or trade with one another, and every city in your world is on a separate island or even a separate continent. Whatever it is, just find a defining element that is unique to you and use it as the foundation for the rest of your world. Great. So now you have a defining element, something that you want to get across to your players. Now I want you to find an anchor point. Find a specific example of how that defining element exists in your world. It doesn't have to be something big or impactful, just one example that anchors you in the world and show you how it functions. My anchor point for Aurelia is the Tusmore Pass, the main river that cuts my continent into fourths. The current of the Tusmore Pass switches directions with the different phases of the moon. Simple as that. The water in my major trade route just ups and changes directions every once in a while, which would have very large impacts on the trading in my world. The people there would have to adjust to that. Hence, the nature is impacting the civilization, which is exactly what I wanted to get across. So, find an anchor point for your defining element and let it ground you in your world. It doesn't have to be something significant, it just has to be something you can look at and say, here is one concrete example of how one thing functions in my world. And once you have one thing, the rest comes easier. Great. So now you have a basis, a foundational idea for a world of your own. Let's move on to the more concrete parts, the parts that your players will see and feel and interact with, starting with the basic geography. What does your world's landscapes look like? Is it like Lord of the Rings with tall mountains and large forests? Or is it more of a tropical landscape with volcanoes and palm trees? Is it otherworldly like Pandora, where the plant and animal life is completely different from what we have on Earth? Or is your world a mix of all of these things? What is the weather and the climate like? Also consider how the magic in your world influences all of these things. Does magic course through the veins of your land? If so, then the tones and landscapes are probably going to be a lot more exotic and wild. But maybe you want to run a more gritty campaign with low magic, so the terrain would be more realistic and focused on survival. These are some of the things to consider when looking at the physical landscape of your world. But once you feel like you have a good grasp on the geography of your world, it is time to make a map. Right, so for the map of your world, if you happen to be a great artist, then go ahead and draw a map for yourself. I, however, am not a great artist. Luckily, there are plenty of online softwares that make it very easy to make a map. The one I personally use and highly recommend is called Inkarnate, simply because the free version of that software is more than enough to make a world map. Plus, it'll look pretty good with very little effort. Now, if you already have an idea of what you want your world or continent to look like, then by all means, just jump right into it. Start sculpting your land masses. But a lot of times it can be difficult to create a continent from nothing. That's why my favorite technique is the dice map technique. Dice map! The dice map is where you put out a piece of paper and you pour a few sets of dice onto it to create a randomly generated landmass. You can use different dice to represent different biomes, and you can sculpt the continent around where the dice land on the paper. Here's the dice map I made for Aurelia, and as you can see, it's just a rough landmass. I ended up putting mountain ranges where the D20s landed, and forest where the D4s landed. In your map, you might even use a certain die to mark where the cities or capitals are. It's totally up to you. And here is Aurelia in its finished state, after I sculpted it in Inkarnate. Now, obviously I took some liberties with the islands and biomes and rivers and all of that, but the point of the dice map is just so you can get a general outline for what your continent might look like. And voila! You now have the beginnings, the fundamentals of a Dungeons & Dragons world of your own. You have a solid theme, an anchor point, the basic geography, and even a world map. Sure, it might be a blank map with no city names, or a world name, or people to inhabit your world, but be patient. All of that will come in due time. In fact, I plan on having part 2 of this episode out within a week. What? Until then, my name is Blake Croft, and thank you so much for joining me to earn your Dungeon Master's degree. I sincerely hope you found these videos helpful. I put a lot of time and effort into making them, and if I can help even one person on their journey to taking up the amazing and difficult role of Dungeon Master, I'll be satisfied. So for this video, more important than liking, subscribing, and commenting, which you should still do, this time, if you'll share this video with a friend if you think they'll find it helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember, friends who crit together, stick together. Bye-bye.